Coming up on today's show, we'll have injury updates and fantasy advice for a large assortment of Major League players with our own real-life clinical expert, Ruvain Guy. It's our 2023 injury extravaganza coming up next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me, as always, is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm still hoarse. It appears that it's hard to shake this sore throat here. I feel good, but I just sound a little muddled. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I hope that voice recovers because we do have our NFBC auction this coming week, and I hope you're able to have your voice in full working order so you can intimidate the other players in that league.
Yeah. Also, I got Tout Wars on Sunday, and I'm playing against you tomorrow. What is that all about?
Yeah, we're in a league. We haven't been in a league against each other, a 15-team league, NFBC style. We have not been in a league against each other in years, since the ATC projections became public, I think.
Yeah, and I've got a pretty good teammate. I actually am pairing up with Derek Carty, so definitely good to align yourself with a smart guy. And so we will take on you, plus a bunch of other industry guys and some home league type guys. But this is the Gotham Diamond District. Steve Cozzolino, friend of the podcast, has invited us once again and invited you to the league, and should be good. We're ready to square off tomorrow. Our buddy Ian Kahn also is facing off against us.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Because it is an auction, and this is going to be, I think, my first auction for the year. I think is it yours? It's second one, I think. You did labor back in Florida,
That's
correct?
Right. Yes, second one for me. So I'm a little bit into it already, and we've done TGFBI, so we know the player pool, and of course we've been doing it every single week on the show. But you don't want to hear from me today because we're talking injuries, and this is going to be our big injury spectacular extravaganza. And Ruvain, of course, is the right guy. So we're going to update you on all the injuries around baseball and a little bit of fantasy there. But let's just first talk about injuries in general, Ruvain, and maybe you can just give us a little bit of a quick ortho on what types of injuries are out there, what are more concerning than others, what's worse for pitchers, hitters, and so on and so forth.
Okay, well, let's start with pitchers because pitchers seem to get injured more than anyone else. The injuries usually concerned about when pitchers get injured include the elbow, obviously shoulder, but also the lower body, especially if the pitcher lands on a leg or a foot that's injured, it can push off the healing time or the recovery time for most pitchers. Those are injuries obviously you have to look out for. Shoulder usually lands the pitcher on the IL for a longer period of time than the elbow unless there is an issue with the UCL ligament, and that could be an issue and that can lead to Tommy John, but shoulder injuries are usually the worst and usually if they require surgery, they can knock the player out for an extended period of time. Just look at Frankie Montas. The hitter injuries you should be worried about. Also shoulder and elbow, but not as much. You should worry more about the hands because that's where if there's a hand injury, let's say they get hit by a pitch, their power could be zapped. Lower body also, that can affect their speed. It can take longer to heal sometimes because they try to push themselves too quickly. If there's an ankle or foot issue with hitters, also they can lose their power as well. If someone has plantar fasciitis like Pujols had a couple of years ago and other players had, their power just gets zapped because they can't put any pressure and they can't get the right balance when they're in the batter's box.
So, in terms of reoccurrence, from year to year, I've always been told that, the soft tissue injuries are much worse for reoccurrence. So we're talking about hamstrings and, muscles like that. Whereas if you were hit in the hand, last year, shouldn't really affect you this year, but hammy could, all of a sudden could crop up. Is there any truth to what I just said?
It is possible, especially if they have not given the player has not given the injury proper time to heal. Now, one thing I did want to talk about, though, is the difference between spraining an issue and spraining an injury, a sprain injury and a strain injury. So the difference between a sprain and a strain is that a sprain injures the band of tissues that connect two bones together, while a strain involves injury with the muscle attached to the bone. So there's a little bit of a difference. When you hear sprain and strain, they're not exactly the same thing. Strains are worse because it's connecting muscle to muscle and it could take longer to heal. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If there's a muscle strain, it tends to take longer to heal as opposed to a sprain, which usually given rest, it usually will heal pretty quickly. Now, another thing I want to mention and talk about is the difference between a ligament and a tendon. You'll hear it all the time. A ligament is a fibrous connective tissue that attaches bone to bone and serves to hold the structures together and keep them stable. For example, if someone has an ACL injury, their knee is unstable, they require surgery. UCL, also, that's for the elbow, for pitchers. If it's unstable or there's an injury, that usually has to be surgically repaired. Now, there's also other ligaments that you have to know about, and they're usually related to the knee. Of the ACL, I mentioned the MCL, LCL. But when you hear the meniscus for the knee, that gives support to the knee when moving, and the tear gives the knee less stability and it gives out. So the meniscus, if there's a tear, you can walk normally, but then all of a sudden you feel like your knee gives out. But that injury doesn't take as long to heal. Usually there's surgery. Usually recovery time for that is about 4 weeks. Now, a tendon compared to a ligament. A tendon is a fibrous connective tissue that attaches muscle to bone. So there you go again. The issue between a tendon and a ligament, when you hear these two things, they're completely different things going on, but they can sound the same to the person who has no idea when it comes to orthopedics.
All right. Well, yeah, definitely. We'll rely on you to tell us when the injuries are more severe.
I hope that wasn't too confusing, but usually the treatment for strain and a sprain are basically the same. But usually the time for a strain takes a little bit longer to heal. So when you hear that, you have to be a little bit more concerned.
So, is there a thing to players being, a quote, an injury-prone player? Guys like Troy Tulowitzki in the past, and Byron Buxton and Mondesi. Is that a thing? Like, because they've gotten injured in the past, will they get injured in the future? Is that a real thing in your opinion?
I think it is very possible, especially because every person or every body is different. And because everyone is different, their tendons and ligaments are stronger or weaker. And you can't really know who has the stronger tendons and ligaments and who's more prone to get injured. But if someone keeps getting injured over and over and over again, and they do what they can to try to prevent it, but it still happens, yes, it may be that their makeup is not as strong as someone who doesn't get injured.
What if somebody's playing in the World Baseball Classic right now? Do you think that's a concern of you, that they could more easily get injured during the year?
Yes, 100%, and I'm very nervous about the pitchers, more specifically in the Baseball Classic, as opposed to the hitters. Max Scherzer actually came out and said that he did not want to play in the World Baseball Classic because he would be ramping up from 2 weeks of spring training to an atmosphere where it's almost like playoff baseball, where there are crowds and you're getting your emotions are getting into it, and you're more risk to get hurt because you're trying to push your body too soon, too fast, and that can definitely lead to injury, especially for pitcher, which is why the WBC actually has limitations as to how many pitches a pitcher can throw, how many innings they can throw, and stuff like that.
All right. So before we go into specific players, looks like Ruven, you've queued up the injury notes, so it's time for the Injury Gurus Trivia of the Week.
So we're going to talk about injuries, and I just thought, throw the question out there. This is not a hard question, but do you think there were more injuries or players on the IL last year when compared to 2021?
I'm going to say no.
You are correct. There were 739 players on the IL last year. 2021, 852 players were on. Now, you do have to take that. There's a little caveat there that COVID played a big deal with that. But if you look at 2019, there were 574 players. So still last year, there's still almost 200 more players on the IL last year as opposed to 2019 and 2018 also. 2018 had 585 players on the IL. So there still is an increase in injuries. Almost 1 out of 2 players end up on the IL at some point, and you have to figure out how to draft properly and have a deep bench in order to help yourself and be able to play the fab very well as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that COVID was, a big reason
big factor
of that. Are we over from that, you think, in terms of people being on the IL from that? I assume so, right?
Yeah, if anything, they'll be out maybe for a day or two, but that's it. I mean, I don't hear MLB talking about testing or anything like that, and so I don't think it's going to be an issue this year at all.
Yeah. Now, I've said on the show here that I think Shohei Ohtani has a lot more extra risk, and that really goes to that fact that players are being injured at a higher rate. Most people in baseball are on the IL at some point during the season. It's over 50%.
Yes.
So if he's on the mound and at bat, I know he's not in the field as a DH, but it's not doubly exposed, but he is more at risk. So just keep that in mind for Otani.
But then you can also say that only the players who are DHs are the ones who are only single risk. Because remember, other players play in the outfield also, play in the infield, and they can get hurt in the field also. So it goes both ways.
Sure, sure. All right, let's go through some players. Let's start with hitters. Let's start with Yordan Alvarez. What is his issue, and do you think that it's going to affect him this season?
Well, he's got he had right hand inflammation last year, June, July, September. He was on the IL in July with it. He played through it in September and October and was fine. This spring, it's now also affecting the other hand. So this may be a chronic thing because this has been going on already for 9 months. Now, all they said is inflammation, so we don't know what for sure is going on. There's been no definite diagnosis given besides inflammation or swelling, which is, I guess, a good thing because if there is something else going on, he probably would have required surgery if there's a tear or anything like that. So when it comes to Yordan Alvarez, I think it's just trying to figure out how many at-bats he should have this year when compared to last year.
Yeah, so Alvarez had some knee problems in the past. Looked like he was doing fine. Last year he had 470 at-bats. This year, still projecting 512. It was down from what it was before. There is a little bit of a discount. He was going at about pick 10 earlier in the season in FBC drafts. It's now at 14. So you're not getting a lot of a discount, but, just a couple bat discount over there. Power is there. I'm not especially nervous. I think he's being priced a little bit too high in an auction setting, which is probably why I'm not going to have him in an auction, but I'd be okay with taking him in a draft right now.
But he hasn't gotten on the field yet for spring training. He hasn't played one game yet. He just started swinging. I mean, if do you want to draft someone in the first round who on March 13th hasn't started swinging yet and is still experiencing pain? He is a risk, but I mean, the reward is so great that some people are willing to take it.
Yeah, I mean, he's shown the tendency to battle some injuries in the past. He's had over 470 at bats in 2 consecutive seasons. To me, it's just a question of do you discount the couple of at bats or the couple of games that you think he's going to be out? You might be getting a little bit of a discount. We've seen that before, where players get hurt in the beginning of spring training and then they have a pretty viable season. Remember, in the first round player, you're looking for somebody who's gonna bank most of their expected stats or a very high percentage. To me, missing a couple of games, still being at the high level, is fine. Like I'm okay if he misses 2 weeks and banks the rest. From that level, he's just such a high level. I have such a high percentage chance that he's gonna really, really rake it. So I don't have an issue drafting him. Again, in an auction, I think he's too expensive for the cost, but I don't have a problem with him being on my roster from a risk perspective.
Yes, I do agree, and he is outfield eligible. If he was just DH eligible, then I'd have a little bit more concern with that. But otherwise, because he's outfield eligible, he's a guy I think you should really take if the price is right.
How about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? He did not participate in the World Baseball Classic. What's going on with him, and any concerns?
I have no concern, and you should buy on the discount right now. He had a knee injury. It was called right knee, or it was knee inflammation early in March, but he appears to be in full health right now. The new manager, John Schneider, said that Guerrero felt good after running the bases this past weekend. He was supposed to do so again today, and then they'll possibly get him into some spring training games again. So if you can get him at a discount right now, I grab it because there should be no discount for him because of injury.
No, there is no discount. He's stayed at the ADP about 12. No change. So there's no buying situation there. I think everyone knows that it's just a minor issue.
Yes.
What about our friend Fernando Tatis? And maybe talk about what his chances are of reoccurrence, because he's had several injuries that could possibly hinder him next year. And how nervous are you at rostering him? And he is not going cheap. I mean, you got to pay a high second round price to get him.
I'm not too nervous about him because he did have surgery on the torn labrum in his shoulder. He did have a follow-up procedure on his left wrist in October, but he's already playing spring training games. I don't see any issue there. He's ramping up, but he's not going to play until April 20th because of his suspension. So just I have no issue with him. I don't think there's much of an injury risk this year because he's had the surgeries, he's had the time to rest, he's ramping up like he should be. So I don't think there should be any issue except just take off those first month, almost month of games, and you should be fine.
I'm really surprised to hear you say that because he's had the shoulder, the wrist, the hamstring, the past. I mean, it's just anything can recur, and the way he plays is so brash and risky, and stuff out off the field. Like I'm surprised to hear you say that, Ruvain.
But he's also young. Younger players tend to recover quicker. He's also playing the outfield, which may be a little bit less strenuous on his body. He did make a sliding catch in the outfield I saw earlier in spring training already. So, he's not going to be in the same. A shortstop gets more wear and tear on the body than the outfielder, I think, just because of all the moving and everything like that. So I really don't have too much concern with Tatis, and I would take him, but I just think he's a little overvalued right now.
Yeah, the price is high to get him because you do have to factor in the suspension. Okay, what about Starling Marte? Groin issues. And I mean, he still stole a lot of bases last year, but will he get back to the 30-plus stolen base level? And is he a bargain? He's only in the 6th round, ADP of 88. I have him on my TGFBI team. He felt like the 10th round. I'm like, I got to take him in the 10th round. Any
Yeah.
concerns for him?
Well, he had core muscle surgery, bilateral core muscle surgery in November. For both sides of his groin, he's making steady progress through his rehab. He should be ready for opening day. He homered in his first spring training game. He looked perfectly fine. He was running the bases perfectly fine until he got hit in the head with a pitch the other day. He's going through concussion protocol. He supposedly should play another game toward the end of this week. He's not playing center field. He said he doesn't want to play center field anymore, which is a good thing. So he should be able to get you full value as a fantasy player, except I don't know how many stolen bases he will get. He may try to push it a little more, but he knows he's getting older, so he may be a little bit more on the cautious side because he doesn't want to break down because he is that important to that lineup.
Yeah, I mean, what's the difference between him and Cedric Mullins? I mean, he's been typically going 3rd round in drafts before this year, and now you're getting him, many rounds later. To me, he can easily go back to that level, and even at the price that he's going, he's a bargain. I mean, do you see it that way?
Yeah, where he's going right now, he's almost, pardon the pun, but he's a steal. I think I think Cedric Mullins is a young version of Starling Marte, and I think that Mullins could even exceed, match his value where he's going. But Marte has a more proven track record. He's shown more power recently, and they did bring in those. They brought in the wall a little bit at Citi Field, so you may see some more power out of him.
Yeah, Mullins doesn't have the batting average capabilities of Marte. That's the thing. And
Also, better lineup. Marte's in a better lineup.
better lineup. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to bat at the top. He might bat later, but that'll just mean more RBIs. But
Yeah.
all right, it is what it is. What about Carlos Correa? What's his story?
Carlos Correa is healthy. The whole problem with his contract was that he fractured his right fibula in 2014, and when the doctor saw it, when the doctor saw it, they were very concerned that it may become arthritic over time. And that's the whole issue, and that's why they didn't want to give him a long-term contract. This year, he should be fine. This injury may pop up. He dealt with a little bit of ankle soreness at the end of last year. And listen, he's also been on the IL every year except for 2020 for the last couple of years, and not for his ankle. So he has had a history of having injuries. The only place I'd be concerned of Carlos Correa is if you're in a dynasty league, for the same reasons why the Mets and the Giants didn't sign him.
Yeah, he's not actually a superstar in fantasy baseball. I have him ranked. I'm gonna tell you, I don't think it's anywhere near the top. I have him ranked as the 16th best shortstop in fantasy. Like he's not a mega superstar, but he's actually still going undervalued for his price. I got him in TGFBI. Solid numbers, pretty high floor. He's just not a superstar, but he's not being priced that way. So I don't have.
He's great where you can get him, and he's solid. He's not going to be great. You can expect us to miss a handful of games during the course of the year, but I think he's comfortable where he is. He knows where he's going to be now, so there's no reason to go after him. There's no injury concern for him.
All right, let's spend a little time talking about Bryce Harper as he's going to be out for roughly half the year. Well, why don't you update us on what's going on with him and when you can expect him back and when you can expect him productively back?
Sure. Bryce Harper, he had Tommy John surgery and ulnar nerve transposition surgery November 2022. It was late because remember the Phillies had a long playoff run and he played through the elbow injury just like Otani did a couple of years ago, and he hit pretty decently with that bad elbow. Harper said this past week that he has no idea whether he'll be playing right field at all this season. So that's something to consider because right now he's only DH eligible in a lot of leagues. So if you're going to draft him, make sure you have a DH available for him because if you have a player like Otani, I don't know how you can roster someone like Bryce Harper also just because there's just no room on your roster. You can only end up playing one or the other unless you want to play Otani as a pitcher. But Bryce Harper did hit off a tee for the first time and this week, but we do expect him back late June, or I expect him back late June or around the All-Star break, and we'll see how that works out.
So I have him down for 277 at bats, and that computes. And Bryce Harper obviously is a top player. I have him down for 16 homers, 8 steals, 280 average. Obviously, it's a nifty pace for a really talented player, but that only computes to about a $5 player. Obviously, you get to add in replacement value, so that gives you more. But let's just talk about how to utilize him in terms of drafting him or not. Now, if you have a league that has an IL, he's worth more than that $5 because obviously you draft him, you put him on the IL, you pick up some $1 player who maybe you get somebody who's better than that. They add in another couple dollars, and it's already could be a $9 player. So if you're paying $5, no problem. $9 probably okay. But if you're in a league that doesn't have an IL, like the NFBC, or a very small IL, like maybe an ESPN league where there's only 3 bench slots, I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to hold him. You're wasting a spot all year. Probably will get back to production, but it's half a year with no bench, and you could get unlucky and get a roster crunch early. And then, of course, there's always the possibility that something goes wrong and he doesn't play. Now, it's not a pitcher. It's a hitter, so we're a little bit more confident he'll come back. But still, it's always a risk. And as you said, he may not even get the outfield eligibility at the end. What's your comfort level taking him?
It's also about roster construction when it comes to him. If you have a lot of injury risk on your team, then you probably don't want to take him either because that's just adding upon that. I mean, yes, you can say, okay, he's going to come back in June, July, but didn't we say the same thing about Fernando Tatis this past year, that he was going to come back, and what happened? He ended up never coming back. So I'm staying away from Bryce Harper this year. If you're in keeper leagues, now's the time to get him cheap. If you're in a trading keeper league or dynasty league, now would be a time to trade for him because his value is the lowest, and you could probably get him for a song.
Yeah, I'll also add that if you have a league that has playoffs at the end, then he's more valuable, right?
Yes,
because the injury risk is front loaded. Is that it's all at the beginning, so that hopefully by the playoffs he'll be okay. It's also more risky at the beginning. Like you have players that are oft injured prone. Like Byron Buxton is healthy now. When will he get injured? I don't know, but he's injured now. I think I'd rather take in terms of the risk that the risk of it being later than now, right?
But I mean, you're saying if you're in a playoff league, you got to get into those playoffs first. And if you have him on the roster and he's burning a spot, you may not make those playoffs.
True, but then you can also trade him to a team if it's a trading league. Also, to trade him to a team that's competitive. There's always
True.
things to do. You should just be aware of the value of him, where his value lies. Do you have an update on Byron Buxton, by the way?
Byron Buxton, he's healthy. There's no issues with him right now. They're going to manage him. They're going to load manage him, which is why the Twins did get another center fielder. They got Michael Taylor, so they're going to load manage him like they did pretty successfully last year. I mean, he had some flare-ups, but where he's going right now I think is perfectly fine. I think it bakes in the risk with him because he does, even when he plays outfield, he does tend to run into walls a lot and go the extra mile to try to get the make the play in the outfield. So I probably would see him more DHing a lot more just because I think the Twins want to keep him healthy. Giancarlo Stanton for the Yankees. Yes, the Yankees played him in the outfield, but they also want to keep his bat in the lineup because he's so valuable.
Yeah, I have him projected for 450 at-bats. By the way, do you know what year he last had more than 450 at-bats? And no, by the way, in 2020, he didn't even have the pace of 450 at-bats. When's the last time he had it?
Did he ever have it?
If 2017, he had 460
Wow.
at bats. So we're talking about guys who are always injured, and you never know with him. I don't know if I personally would buy to a 450 at bat level. I also am concerned about his batting average. I mean, he batted 224 last year. He had a 30% strikeout rate. That's not looking good. He did walk last year. He walked almost 9%, which was something for him. And even though ATC is projecting 11 steals, I think that's high. I think I see him as stealing less and less. I see him more as a home run hitter, really. And the way I've shaped up his profile, he's less interesting. He's less unique. So I don't really see a need to take on that injury risk. I'm better off getting like a Nick Castellanos, to be honest, for roughly the same price, who I think is going to maybe even get better. So I'm not that into Byron Buxton this year, although if you are, it's not the worst thing in the world, especially if his price dips.
Well, I did take him last year in a couple of leagues, so I was on the Buxton bandwagon last year. But sometimes when you get burned with a player a couple of years in a row, you don't want him on your roster anymore, and he's one of those guys for me.
Let's talk about another injury-prone guy, Adalberto Mondesi. Yeah.
Oh
What's your
boy.
take on him?
Oh boy, what I mean, what do you do with him? Do you same thing with what do you do with him? He's injured every single year, but he hit outside. He fielded grounders this past week. Alex Cora, the manager, called it another good day recently for him for his rehab. He did have ACL surgery May of last year. Usually recovery time is about a year. He could come back at a year's time exactly. He could come back May. He could come back June. He could come back July. But remember, Ronald Acuna had the same issue. You saw him in the very beginning of the year have a lot of stolen bases, and then he mentioned that his knee started bothering him. So yeah, I think you could see the same type of trajectory for Mondesi. You may see when he comes back, he tried to push it too much and then have a setback. So he's another guy. I'm done drafting. I don't think I have the stomach to take him anymore.
Yeah. Where does he bat when he comes back? Does he bat last?
Well, that Red Sox lineup is not that great, so they may want to put him up higher just because they did trade for him.
Yeah, but
That's the
such
only
a
thing I could think of. But I mean, I have no idea what they're gonna do with him because I don't think they know what they're gonna do with him yet.
such a crappy OBP. I mean, just he had a 37% strikeout rate last year. Just ugh. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a flyer. I think I'd rather spend my $3 or whatever at the end on somebody else, and take care of stolen bases before you get to Mondesi. I would not count on it. Again, it's not just Mondesi. It's if you're counting on him for steals, it's a major portfolio risk for your team. Like
Yeah, it's similar to the Billy Hamilton conundrum. Do you want to draft him toward the end of your draft and just have a one category player possibly? I mean, Mondesi has shown power in the past, but I mean, do you want that? You have to make sure your roster is constructed properly that you can handle it if he doesn't succeed.
Would you rather have John Birdie, who, by the way, Mondesi is projecting at a higher value than Birdie. Birdie's projecting at just below replacement level in a 15-teamer, and Mondesi is projected as a $3 player.
Right. I think I like Birdie better. He will get his playing time. He on the Marlins. He will see that. And he's healthy. I want the healthy speedster now. I don't want the healthy speedster 2 months from now because you don't know where you're going to get 2 months from now.
Let's talk about somebody else who can also contribute stolen bases, Harrison Bader for the Yankees. I like him when he plays, but he's already starting out with an injury. What's his story?
Yeah, he's got a left oblique strain. Again, that's muscle strain. And he's expected to be out for at least 6 weeks. When they say 6 weeks for an oblique strain, that usually means it's moderate. A mild oblique strain is usually 4 weeks. Moderate is usually 6 to 8 weeks in some cases. He was sent for more testing. He was sent for testing, and that's what it came out. And he always seems to be bit by the injury bug. When he's on the field, he will play center field. He will get those stolen bases for you. But I mean, when you compare them to other outfielders who also have oblique strains, you have Seiya Suzuki, who's also got a moderate oblique strain. You have Mitch Haniger with a grade 1 oblique strain. This is just in spring training. All these guys. I mean, Haniger said he'll be ready for opening day. Seiya Suzuki may come mid to late April, and Bader also probably mid to late April, if not later than that.
Do these oblique injuries, do they last longer than just the timetable that they're given? And does it affect them for like the next month after?
Yes and no. It depends on how they let the injury heal and what happens right after. Because when they initially get the injury, the way to heal this is rest. And if they push themselves too quickly, too fast, it will just keep flaring up, and they'll continue to have setbacks. And then when they come back, they may alter their swing a little bit, or alter the way they play a little bit, just because they're concerned about re-injuring themselves. So these oblique injuries, I mean, pitchers are worse. Pitchers, it's a whole windup and everything. But when it comes to these oblique injuries, it's it's really a crapshoot. 6 weeks, and then are you going to get the same production after that? Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. It depends on the player. It depends what they do.
Yeah, sure. Does it affect? I mean, it's got to affect pitchers more than hitters, obviously, right?
Yes. The pitchers
Right.
usually are at almost 8 weeks when it comes
And
to
does it
that. Yeah.
affect stolen bases?
Yes, because especially if they usually dive head first. I mean, it's if it's an oblique, it's an abdominal muscle near the shoulder. It's an injury that can actually be made worse by the way they slide, and it may change the way they slide. Instead of sliding head first, you slide feet first.
So, like Mitch Haniger, he seems like a nice little bargain. I always like picking him. Big 35 homer threat, possibly. Yeah, he had 39 homers 2 years ago. Crazy. And he's a little older. He's 32 years old. I mean, is this this going to shut him for zap his power for April and half of May?
I don't think so. I think he said it's not as bad as they thought it would be, and he's a guy who knows how to get back from injury because he's been doing it for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So I think he will know when he's ready, and because he's older, I think he's going to push himself only when he's ready, and I don't think he's going to zap his power immediately. It may for like the first couple, like week or two, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but then once you get to the dog days of summer, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, he had 620 at bats in 2021. Crazy. That was after
Yes.
that big groin injury.
Yes.
Let's talk about Jordan Walker. What is his status? This is the guy who's just is lighting up spring training, crushing homers, looking like the next coming of Julio, I guess even. Yeah, what's your take on him?
Jordan Walker actually strained his right shoulder when he slid head first. There we go, slid head first into second base. They considered him immediately day to day, but because again he's young, he's a guy who can bounce back a little bit quicker than other players can. I'm not overly concerned with this injury. I think he'll be perfectly fine. Again, I don't. His hype is off the charts right now because he's really hitting really well in spring. I don't I like him, but I don't like where he's going right now. I don't think he's worth it for me value wise because you're not going to get a good value there.
So I respect all the other podcasts that people listen to, and where they talk. Oh, Jordan Walker, you got to look out for him. Look what he's doing. He's a guy who could really have upside. Blah blah blah. And I respect everybody who highlights Jordan Walker. I can't for the life of me see a reason really why to buy him. His ADP has shot up just in the last 2 weeks from about 200 all the way up to 131. It's not done yet, assuming he gets back on the field, right? It'll go down quickly if he doesn't. I just don't understand the buy. So like ATC is pricing him at 425 at bats. Like to me, that's like a nice chunk for a rookie who may not even make the opening day roster, but to come up 475 at bat, 425 at bats. Okay, I have him at about 10 homers, 10 steals, $5 valuation. The largest projection that I see really is roughly around 15 homers, 15 steals, and that computes to about a $15 valuation. And an ADP of 130, it's about a $13 valuation in a 15-team league, and that's just going to go up. So you're basically buying him at par value for what his absolute upside is projected. Now, can he go off? Can he go 2020? Sure, there's a percentage chance, but most of these prospects don't do that in the first year. Only the super elite ones do. And even if you do get it, what are you earning? $20? You're earning just a minimum profit. This could be a complete waste of $15, totally. I just don't see why these guys who have a lot of risk, these prospects are so hyped up, and just people buy them because they're very flashy. They obviously have the upside. But I don't know. I'd rather have a tried and true guy to gain most of my value back and a guaranteed little profit, or a safer profit, I just don't see the risk reward here for prospects. Prospects generally bust. I mean, for every one of the Julio Rodriguez, there's all the Joe Adells that just never make it. I don't know. Do you see why? Do you see the cost? I don't really get it.
I don't really get it either. He's never played a game above Double A, and the reason why he's getting all this playing time is because his normal position is third base. Yes, he's played a little bit in the outfield, but his primary position is third base. Do you know why he's playing third base right now? Because
Yeah,
Nolan
Nolan.
Arenado is in the World Baseball Classic, so that's where he's playing. They had him play in the outfield a little bit. He played 25 games in right field last year. He played 4 in center, 2 in left, and in Double A, not in Major League, in Double A, not even Triple A. So I don't know where all this helium is coming from. He's a guy that if he comes up, I'll say let someone else take him. Let someone else take that risk because there's a good chance he, like you said, he may not even make the roster.
I mean, look, I saw him in person in the Arizona Fall League, and I remember it was the Fall Stars game, and in the very last pitch of the game to him, he just barely swung and just almost hit a homer to right field. The guy has power. The guy is good. I mean, there's no question about it. But, back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you played fantasy baseball, he would be one of these sleeper types. And you'd get him on your roster for $1 or $2. You'd get him really at the very end. Sleeper. The guy's not a sleeper if he's going for a minimum of $15 in your league. I mean, what are you trying to earn? You're just giving up all your value right away. Like, I'd rather take a $2 chance on a returning Brandon Belt or something like that can earn $10. And then you're getting an $8 profit. This is like a guaranteed loss. I just don't get it.
He's overexposed. What it is, it's overexposure because back then when we got those sleepers for $1, no one knew about them because no one saw them. But now because everything's on TV, you can see all the highlights and everything. He's being overexposed. By the way, he did play this past Saturday, so he is already back on the field. So injuries, I'm not concerned about it. But where he's going, where are you going to put him in your lineup? You're going to put him on your if he starts, you're going to put him in your outfield, and where are you getting him in the outfield for the same spot? You can get a player with more. Who's someone you will get something out of for sure, instead of a risk that you're taking so early in your draft.
Yeah, it's too early. By the way, I hope you guys are enjoying this show with me and Ruvain. This literally is how we sound on the phone when we just talk to each other. We're just back and forth talking here. We usually have a guest on, which is great, and we love having guests. We have got guests most of the time to always get their point of view. But hope you're enjoying this banter back and forth here. All right, moving on. Last couple of hitters. How about Mike Trout? Any concerns with Mike Trout for finishing the year? He's pretty good, right?
Nope, he looks good in the World Baseball Classic. He looks like he's good to go. Just don't expect any stolen bases from him.
Yeah, the only reason I'm dinging him, the only reason he's not a complete first rounder for me is the steals could be literally 2. I don't expect anything. ATC's projecting 4. There's no projection system that's really projecting him over 5. It's just a guaranteed just token. And for that reason, it's not that you can't pick him in the first round. I think it's a fine pick. Just that his value isn't as high as like a Jose Ramirez because of
And
that.
did you see he stole a base in the World Baseball Classic?
Yes, I did.
Which he did that, probably his ADP went up. Like, oh look, he still steals bases. No, that was an aberration.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the greatest guys in baseball, and he had 438 at bats last year. He's gonna. I expect him to miss a little time, but I don't expect this to be a chronic thing like he's out for the year. So Mike Trout is a solid pick, a very good pick for this year. Joey Votto, what's his story, and is there any value in picking Votto at all this year?
I don't think so. He just recently started playing again. He's played some spring games, coming off his shoulder surgery. He had a labrum issue. There's really no or minimal value in him. If you want to get him on the waiver wire later on, there's no definitely in a NFBC style league for a regular NFBC. There's really no reason to have him on your roster unless there are injuries. He will play. I don't know how many at bats he's going to get. He is 39, 40 in that range. Do you want that type of first baseman? I mean, if you were able to roster Miguel Cabrera the last couple of years and you think that it was okay, then Joey Votto is probably about 2 rungs below that. So I think that's the way you should look at it.
Good TikTok videos, though. I like that.
Oh, very good, very good.
Last hitter, Royce Lewis.
Royce Lewis had ACL repair June of last year. He's on the 60-day IL. The soonest he can come back is maybe late June. Again, same thing like with Alberto Mondesi. It's the ACL. Usually takes about a year, a full year to fully recover. And especially a guy who did use his legs in the minors, this is something to watch. I don't know if they're going to push him so quickly, but you never know with the Twins, especially if they're in a race and they need a little jump start, so to speak. Royce Lewis may be the guy, but he's going to be late June, July, that time period.
All right, let's move on to pitchers who are often very trickier. We've had a lot of questions coming in from our audience mailbag, most of them for pitchers, actually. And, the first one, he'd be great to just throw out there for like a live podcast because, I would ask, all right, as soon as you heard about Carlos Rodon, how many of you said, I'm out? Like, whenever you have these injuries, there's always the, is this it for the year? Is this Tommy John? Is this it? Or is this a 3-month forearm strain? Or, what percentage of the time is it like nothing?
It's a case by case basis. Now he's had Tommy John already. He had Tommy John in 2019. He's dealt with shoulder issues in 2020 and in 2021. Last year he was healthy. For him, he said he pitched through this type of strain last year. Okay, that's great, but now he's having it before the season even starts, which alarm bells go off. Is he going to hit the projections of how many innings he's supposed to pitch now? I don't think so. I think it's going to be less. I think you'll still get the Carlos Rodon, but you'll probably get him mid to late April to start because remember he has to now ramp up. He's in a no throw mode right now for the next couple of days still, and he's going to be out probably all of April. So, bake that into your projections. Is he still a second round or third round pitcher? Probably not anymore.
Yeah, I find that most projections do lag in taking playing time down. I have here, most of the Fangraphs projections show him at 160 innings. Now, I don't go on ATC and say, you know what, I'm Ariel and I just think it's going to be 100 and just throw 100. Like, I don't do that. I have a mathematical process that I employ if I have any influence. And if most projections are really not taking him all that much down yet, there's a range. There's some percentage up or down that I have my own discretion that I can do on top of it, which counts as some kind of weight. Long story short, I took him down. It came to about 20 innings. I have now hit at about 140 innings. I won't take him down more than that in the projection. But if I'm betting, if I'm gonna be drafting, I don't know that I want to draft him to 140 innings. It's a lot of risk for a top pitcher. And by the way, he is genuinely skilled. Even with the injury, he comes up as a one of the top pitchers. I'll tell you what even number he comes up as. Look at this pitcher number 12. That's pretty darn good for a guy who's missing a month already. Are you scared to take Rodon? Like, what's your general intuition? He's going right now at still in like the third round ish.
Well, I wasn't a big fan of him earlier, even before the draft season started, and this just lowered it even more. If you're taking him, he's going to be probably your ace, and you're taking an ace with already a forearm issue in March. How could he? That's like drafting, I guess, Jacob deGrom. It's very similar. You're going to get the innings. You don't know how many innings you're going to get. Those innings are going to be very valuable to you. I think Rodon will have more wins than Jacob deGrom just because he plays on a better team and probably get more innings in general because he'll get more than deGrom will. But if you're drafting him as your ace, who's going to be your number two? You got to get a number two that's a little bit more stable. It's a matter of roster construction again.
Hold on a second. How is he the same as Jacob deGrom? Because to me, Jacob deGrom is a guy who's healthy now, and it's a question of when will it crack. As opposed to Rodon, I don't even know if he's going to be healthy. I don't know when he's going to be healthy. Just because they say end of April doesn't mean end of April. I think there's more uncertainty in the duration now. deGrom is just, will he last all year? I'm actually more worried about the injury risk of Rodon than deGrom. As ridiculous as that might sound, I really am.
I'm more worried about deGrom because he's about 4 years older. He throws about 3 or 4 miles faster than Rodon, and that's not human is not supposed to do that. It's not supposed to be physically possible to do that for that long period of time. So I think both these pitchers will break down at some point, and Rodon has already broken down. I think there's more risk still with Degrom because it's March 13th and he didn't even get on a mound yet. He is supposed to
Oh, he
pitch though.
did. He did.
He was supposed to pitch. I think it was today in
Yeah,
the
he did. He
background
did.
in the backgrounds. Yes, in the back fields he actually pitched. And they had a whole bunch of people watching him. I think most of them were doctors, just making sure he was healthy. But he's a guy that we spoke about him so much on this podcast. We've seen him in New York. We see how how he breaks down, how quickly he does. But when he's on the mound, he is ungodly. The stadium, it goes crazy when he's on the mound. He is like a phenomenon. It's like, I don't know if you remember Hideo Nomo. When I went to a couple games when Hideo Nomo was really big, and the stadium was just, it didn't matter if you're away, home, the stadium was packed because he was worth the price of admission. That's what Jacob deGrom is. Carlos Rodon's not that guy, but again, he had shoulder issues 2 years in the last 2 out of the last 4 years. He had Tommy John surgery in 2019. He's had just as much injury issues over the last couple of years as DeGrom has.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about Rodon than Degrom, because again, it's the theory of he's currently healthy versus he's currently not healthy, and I'm not the medical expert, but I don't know, for some reason that puts more risk in my eye.
So in this, let's say you're in the third or fourth round and you want a starting pitcher, Rodon's available and DeGrom's available. You're going to take DeGrom?
No, I think I'm not taking either, but if it was an either or, I think I would. Yes. Let's talk. I mean, let's talk about Degrom. I guess we've talked about him, but I mean, is there any medical reason that he should be injured? Just only that he throws very hard? Is that
Yeah, that's it. He throws very hard, and someone should not be able to throw that hard that many times. It's just not humanly possible. When I was at a couple of his games, every single one of his pitches were either 98 or above. He was electric. It's great, but I think he has to learn how to dial it down a little bit. I mean, he had a side injury coming into spring training, which probably means oblique, which may have been just soreness or something like that. I mean, him and both Nate Eovaldi for the Rangers, they both had side issues coming in, and they both were supposed to throw this coming week, and their concerns, small concerns here and there, but they're also getting up in age. Rodon is a little bit younger, and I'm using that because younger players do tend to heal quicker than older players.
Nate Eovaldi? He seems to be going for a little bargain, like a nicely skilled pitcher. And any pitcher that's going down, down in the mid-low rounds, they're there because of WARs. Either we're not sure how good they are, either we don't know how many innings they are, or in the case of Eovaldi, it's high skills, just that it's iffy on the health always. I tend to like those guys because sometimes you can run into more playing time than you think, and the high skills pay out. And if even if they don't play, then you get a replacement after them. That's why Kershaw is always worth more than the skills, especially for those leagues that have IL. Any issues with Nate Eovaldi? Is he going to be ready for the year?
Yes, they're just saying he had side issue just like DeGrom did. That's why I'm lumping those two guys together. But the shutdown for Eovaldi, appears to be more cautionary than concerned. That's what the Rangers are saying. They're saying it could be just from general soreness from ramping up. So I'm not overly concerned with Eovaldi. So he's where he's going right now. He's a good bargain, and I'll take him.
Let's talk Tyler Glass now. Came back from Tommy John surgery for a little bit last year. Looked good. High hopes for him. Very high-skilled pitcher. It was a risk to take him at where he went, but now all of a sudden, injury again. What's his story? How much can we expect of him? And, I mean, is he going to come back when the doctors say he's going to come back? I always feel like they're always off by a couple of weeks.
Yeah, especially when it comes to a pitcher, they usually are, and they're saying right now 6 to 8 weeks for a grade 2 left oblique strain for Glass now. They say 6 to 8 because, exactly like you said, they don't know when he's going to come back. But usually a grade 2 oblique strain for a pitcher is usually somewhere between that range of 6 to 8 weeks. But this is the beginning of the year. He hasn't ramped up yet. He hasn't started pitching yet. He pitched a couple of games, and then this happened, a couple of games in the spring. So, he hasn't ramped up. They have to ramp him up first. So even if he does come back and they want to ramp him up in the majors, he's only going to pitch a couple innings, three innings, 4 innings. You're not going to get the full value from him probably until end of May, maybe? End of May, beginning of June? And where he's going right now, I don't think he's worth it.
No, I would not take a risk on him. His price has fallen, but I think
But still,
I'm
if
out.
he's not coming back until around June, it's you have to consider that. And he doesn't. He isn't a good team. He's high value innings. Again, just like DeGrom, he has that great upside. But the fact that he already has this oblique strain, is he going to compromise his delivery now? I mean, he is coming back from Tommy John. It's a whole big issue. He hasn't been himself yet, and we have not seen himself the way he should be.
Yeah. There's always the question of also when the pitchers come back, are they going to come back and throw more than 5 innings to start? Because if they're not going to throw more than 5 innings to start, like let's say they've come back, they bring them back. All right, first start, here's 3 innings. Next start is 4 innings. Next start is 4 innings, 5 innings. Like, even though they come back at a certain time, it could be a whole nother month till they actually pitch after 5 innings or later. And then we're talking about an extra month of not winning games. Right? Like, it's not just coming back. It's coming back and lasting innings for these pitchers. And especially Glasnow on the Rays. You think the Rays are going to let him go 6? No way. So I am totally not buying Glasnow because the wins numbers just got to be low. I can't imagine this guy's going to win more than a handful of games this year.
Well, right now, what does ATC have for the innings for Glasnow, even after the injury? I think it's like 110, 115, something like that.
So ATC has 108 innings, 7 wins. Whether I buy the innings or not, which I probably, you tell me on the innings. The 7 wins, I don't. I just don't buy that.
No, because he's not going to stay in the game long enough to get those wins. I think in the very beginning, the 100 innings, I guess 108 innings. I mean, if you're out to late May, you're missing 2 months of the season already. How many innings are you going to project? Plus, he is still coming back from Tommy John. I'm sure they would have an innings limit on him anyway. So,
not 100, not 108. Like there's no concern with the Tommy John now in terms of innings cap.
But because he has this new injury now, I think they will be concerned and a little bit more cautious with him because they don't want him to have any setbacks, and that's the key word, setbacks.
It's the per start innings I'm worried about, and it's any Rays pitcher I'm worried about, but especially him. Oh, he's back in the May. Well, but is he back to being able to win a game? That could be June.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's my concern. Joe Musgrove. Here's somebody who, interestingly, the innings went down a little bit because of the toe injury. Which you'll tell us about. ADP slipped about a round, didn't go down all that much. Before you even tell me the story, I kind of think that Joe Musgrove, the market did just the right thing. Like he's worth probably about 3 less starts. Maybe he starts the season, first 2 weeks or whatever on the IL till he ramps up, and then you're basically losing a round of value, and I think the market is doing a great job in pricing it. If you thought it was a bargain before, I think you still think it's a bargain, and vice versa. Everyone always talks, oh, well, Musgrove's so you gotta take him down, but actually the market's already doing that. So it's always whether you think the market is more wrong than you or not. And in this case, I think it's just it's indifferent. So what it was before is a bargain before, and if it wasn't, it wasn't. What's the status?
He is a buy. He broke his big left toe at the end of February. He already threw a bullpen session last week. He's targeting his debut against Atlanta. He already said this, against Atlanta, April 6th. So you know how many starts that he's going to miss?
None. Just back of the rotation, yeah.
Yes, back of the rotation. So he actually used a hypobaric chamber to try to get a little bit quicker. Usually, at first he said he's going to miss 1 or 2 weeks because they tried to shut him down, but he's already throwing. The question is whether or not he's going to have any setbacks. Now, it's his left big toe. It's his landing toe. It's not his push-off. His landing foot, not his push-off foot, which makes the comeback a little bit quicker. He can have, more protection on that toe when he pitches. He is a buy. I mean, whatever discount you're getting now, take it and run.
Yeah, I actually would buy the over on the ATC projections of 150 innings. Looks like the projections took it down a little bit. Obviously, 2-3 starts, but I would buy the over. And by the way, Musgrove's problem in the past has been burnout in the last half of the season. Maybe this helps him down the stretch, and he can keep his ratios better longer. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I overall, I don't think he's affected that much. This is not a pitching injury. It's not an arm, leg. It's not a leg. It's a foot. It's not an oblique. It's not a shoulder, elbow. So I don't know if you're not concerned. I'm not concerned, and I was buying him at par value before. I'll continue to buy him now.
I agree.
Yeah. What about Tony Gonsolin? What's he dealing with?
Gonsolin is dealing with an ankle injury. He actually avoided a fracture when he injured his left ankle during fielding drills, but the sprain he suffered seems to have been a fairly significant one. He's still being shut down for a couple more days, and then he has to be built back up. The manager, Dave Roberts for the Dodgers, wouldn't offer a timetable for his return. With that being said, he may miss the first couple of weeks of the season because he hasn't even ramped up yet.
Yeah. He's been going at a nice, decent bargain. He's a very risky, though. ATC interest is very, very high. Projections are all over the place with his value. I mean, projections have him sub-3 all the way to like 4.5 ERA.
Right.
All over the place. All the Dodgers pitchers are like that also. Julio Urias gets dinged as well. Anybody pitching there. There's always projections differ. But, before the injury, I would have said he was a small bargain. Now it's...
He's got to drop some more for it to be a good bargain to buy.
Yeah. Yeah, now I'd probably shy away. Although I'm not out on him, but I'd probably shy away because you're not getting the bargain.
Right.
What about new Mets phenom Kodai Senga with his ghost forkball?
With his ghost forkball with a different ball. That's why he has tendonitis in his right index finger. He's considered day to day. He attributes the injury due to the fact that it was a different baseball from where he pitched to now in the majors. There's less tack on the ball here as opposed to where he pitched before, and I think that's what caused the injury. He said if he needed to, he could have pitched this week. He really could have, but the Mets are being cautious with him. I don't think he's going to miss any time, and believe me, with the injuries on the Mets staff, he needs to be there for them.
I don't understand why, like, it's a surprise. Like the first week he comes over, oh, look, the ball is different. Oh, look, the mound is different. Like, wouldn't they do research on it before signing? Like, wouldn't he, as soon as he signed, pick up a ball to see that it's a new, different ball? Like, what's going on?
But I mean, I guess he just took it for granted, and it's a repetition. He may have done it a couple of times, but when he started doing more repetition in spring training, that's when he started to feel it, and that's when he started having the problem.
Kenley Jansen was we were talking with Eno the other show, and they're like, oh yeah, he just figured out that he needs to work on his pitch clock. It just figured out. The rule changes have been out for a while. You're listed as the number one of most offender. It didn't dawn on you to check it out. I don't get that. Maybe he is and we don't know about it, but it just sounds funny to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it does sound a little weird, especially because he did sign this pretty big contract with the Mets. You don't think the Mets would have said, start practicing with an American baseball sooner rather than later?
All right, what about Lance McCullers Jr., who looks like he did this kind of trick last year? Came back last year at the end and looked really fabulous, but, you paid for a lot more innings out of him. I don't know. These guys, to me, are repeat offenders, and I just don't buy these guys. But what's your take on when he's coming back and if we should buy him?
Well, Lance McCullers is, in my opinion, the Adderall of pitchers. He said Wednesday that he won't be ready to pitch at the start of the season because he had an MRI done and it showed a small muscle strain. Now, you tell me what that means. I don't know exactly what a quote-unquote small muscle strain is, but that's not a good thing. And I think he's going to be out for at least a month, and he just resumed playing catch recently. Maybe you get him around May, but he's just had very bad luck with injuries. He's a quality pitcher, but I mean, he's just got to stay on the field.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the really. He's not such a big bargain, and you're not really getting a ridiculous discount to roster him for me not to be interested. I mean, he's going late enough in drafts. He's going. Oh, actually, he slipped. He's now going at 293. All right. I mean, sure. I guess if I have him projected for 100 innings, but I don't know. Even at 100 innings, he's only worth like $2. I don't know.
Would you rather have 100 innings from Lance McCullers or 130 innings, let's say, from like an Alex Cobb or an Alex Wood, who also their injury risk, quote unquote risks, but their projections like 130 innings, something like that. Would you rather have one of those two guys or Lance McCullers?
Cobb is projected for 155, currently healthy. I think I would take the Cobb because again, they're currently healthy.
Okay, I tend to agree with that, but remember, how many innings did he pitch last year? How many innings did Cobb pitch? How many innings did Alex Wood pitch? And how many innings will Lance McCullers pitch? It could be pretty close for all those guys.
150 last year for Cobb and 130 for Wood. Yeah, McCullers pitched like 50, so Yeah, I think I would take the Alexes over the Giants Alexes over Lance
And
McCullers.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Now you called him the Mondesi of pitching, but what is James Paxton? Is he the Buxton of pitching? I guess with the X.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paxton Buxton.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, he has a hamstring issue. He hopes that he'll resume throwing from the mound by the end of this week. He played catch last week, to test things out. He has a hamstring issue. He had a grade 1 right hamstring strain, and he's not expected to be ready for opening day. He's coming off a slew of injuries. He's a guy that if you get him really really late and you have room on your roster for him and you want to take that risk, fine. But he's also a guy that if he's not drafted in one of your leagues and you want to get him, let's say, toward the second week in Fab for $1 or $2 because people aren't thinking about him, then that's probably the best way to go about treating James Paxton.
Sure. I mean, why not take a stab if you have the room, especially if you have the IL. How many innings has he had over the last 2 years, Paxton?
Let's see. I don't think he pitched at all last year. And I think he pitched I'd say 60 innings the year before.
Lower.
Lower. 30?
Keep going.
Okay. So do you want that risk on your team?
One.
I mean, this is
one
inning.
One.
Wow. Okay. So yeah.
I should have said how many inning.
How many inning? Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. What about Jose Quintana? One Met on the IL. It looks like, although Epler said, we're not telling you it's going to be 3 months. Although
Yes.
he thought
Okay.
it's 3 months, right?
As that's a load of hooey. He has a stress fracture in his rib. They initially said, I mean, there are reports saying that he's going to be out for 3 months. I tend to agree with that. I mean, right away, Billy Epler said, no, he's not going to be out for 3 months. Yes, he will be out for 3 months. Chris Sale missed 3 months with almost the exact same injury last year. So he will probably be out until the All-Star break, if not a little bit later, which is why David Peterson and Tyler McGill, if you can get them cheap, if they're still cheap, those are guys to go after because those can be the replacements, and the Mets may go with a 6-man rotation, and those are the next 2 guys up.
Yeah, you think it's going to be McGill or Peterson for the 5th?
I think it's going to be both. I think that the Mets said they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. I think McGill in his last outing pitched, 3 or 4 innings. So I think the Mets are building both of them up just in case. I think they really don't have another lefty. That's why Peterson has a little bit of an edge there. But I don't think they need that lefty per se. They're both very good pitchers, so they're both not bad replacements for him. This is why last year when we drafted DeGrom, who did we pick as insurance for these guys? And that was Tyler McGill,
Yeah.
or Megill, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
He's a guy that we drafted him because we knew he was going to replace DeGrom for we don't know how long. Same thing with Quintana. You don't know how long he's going to be out, so you can get one of those guys. They will announce it closer to the opening day who's going to take that spot. But, I mean, this is a number 5 starter, 4 starter, and they want to have a 6-man rotation. I'd expect both McGill and Peterson to be in the opening rotation.
Yeah, so just a word about ATC projections on this. Somebody asked me, and because I have 100 innings for David Peterson right now, that probably will go up. Now, projections are going to go up. They did not. Because Quintana was not officially announced as out, you don't see a lot of movement in projections, even though we knew it would happen. So there's a little bit of a lag of ATC because it relies on underlying. I give it a little bit of a boost manually, as I do within my confines of what I think is actuarially accepted to introduce your own input. But you'll see it go up more as projections will go up. So the 100 innings now is low. At 100 innings, Peterson projects about a $4 player. So this is a nice little bargain here.
Yes.
I
his
really like
his ADP is going up in TGFBI as soon as the Quintana injury came up. In my league, Peterson was grabbed and McGill was picked around after. So people are taking their sides as to who they want.
I also heard the news. I had the next pick. Boom, David Peterson. So that was a good pick there. All right, let's do a few more. Daniel Hudson, prospective saves guy, as we talked last show, for the Dodgers. When's he going to be back, and is he going to get any save ops?
Very possible, but not yet. He's recovering from last June an ACL repair in his left knee. He had ankle tendonitis this past February. He's not expected to be ready for opening day. Dave Roberts calls him, quote, still a ways away from pitching live games. He did throw a live batting practice session last week, so he is coming along, but it's going to take some time, and he is 36. So he's not a spring chicken anymore, which means his recovery may take a little bit longer. You may not see him tour until mid to late April, maybe around that time. That's when I think he'll come in. And because he's coming off an injury, I don't think they'll put him into the closer's job right away. So I think if you want another option at the closer position for the Dodgers, I think you take them for now.
Yeah, I don't like holding on to him, especially in leagues we don't have some IL room. Just he's not going to be a saves up guy for at least a month into the season, and it's not a good spot to hold. What about Liam Hendricks? When's he coming back? Is he? I gotta imagine he's not worth holding in any league other than IL.
No. There's no timeline yet. His top priority remains his battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We don't know how long he's going to be out for. I tried to do some research on this. I mean, Carlos Carrasco had CML, or chronic myeloid leukemia, another form of cancer. He missed 3 months. John Lester had a similar cancer issue as Liam Hendricks did, and he was diagnosed September of 2006, and he missed most of 2007. So I wouldn't bank really on Liam Hendricks doing much this year, but there still is a possibility that he's a quick healer, and hopefully, God willing, he will be a quick healer and be perfectly fine, and maybe we'll see him toward the end of the year.
How about Chris Sale? Looks so far pretty strong this spring. You're getting an injury discount for him. He's high skill pitcher going mid late. Is he somebody who you'd be on? Is he going to be strong? What's your take?
Yes. He's a buy. He had this, we mentioned him before about the rib fracture that he had last year, the one that Quintana has now. He fractured his finger. He pitched 3 scoreless innings over this weekend. So that's something to consider. He can be top flight. He's already said that he has something to prove this year. Coming off those injuries, and because of his age, there should be no inning limit coming back. So I think he's a guy that may give you more innings than you expect. And where he's going, I think he's a buy.
How many innings do you think he's had over the last 2 seasons?
Let's see. Well, he missed the first 3 months of last year, and then he missed, I think, the last 2 months of last year. So he probably pitched about a month. You're talking about 5 starts, so let's say about
he had 5 innings last year.
5 innings last year. Okay, 5 innings. And the year before, even less.
He had 42 innings the year before. He had 48 for the 2 seasons.
Okay, so less stress on his arm. He is older, but that is less stress on his arm.
I guess. All right, let's go with John Means. Sneaky pick for last year, but what's his story? When's he coming?
Means actually threw 20 fastballs at 50% intensity off of a mound last week. That being said, he had Tommy John surgery April of last year. His target is a late July return, so he's not rosterable right now unless you have an IL and you really think he's going to start when he comes back. So you're talking about late July. Pitchers coming off Tommy John, a lot of times they have setbacks. When they say late July, I'll say closer to August, mid-August. How much are you going to get value out of him? I have no idea. I don't know if he's going to come back as a starter right away. So he's not really rosterable right now.
Finally, another guy who missed the WBC for injury, Nestor Cortez. Any concerns with him starting on time and just being what he did last year?
I think he will probably miss 1 or 2 starts. He was tentatively scheduled for live batting practice today. I didn't see whether or not he did, and he's supposed to pitch in a Grapefruit League game this coming Sunday. So if he can do that, he may be able to ramp up. He's a little bit behind, and barring any setback from this grade 2 hamstring strain that he had either early in camp or right before camp, I think he may only miss like a week or 2.
All right. Well, that's all the hitters and pitchers we have to talk about. As we said, this is a big, long injury episode. Hopefully that answered most of your questions. I think we covered pretty much everybody that people have concerns about. Any other random ones? Let's throw out Anthony Rendon. Is he back to being ready?
Anthony Rendon, he's no injury risk right now, but his value is not that high because he's also one of those injury-prone players after his great season when the Nationals made their run.
And Chris Bryant?
Chris Bryant seems healthy, but also a guy who always seems to break down. So, listen, for those types of guys, if you want to roster them, that's fine, but make sure your roster construction is in a way that you can compensate just in case these guys don't hit the high notes that you want them to hit.
All right, that's it for me here. Any last words, Ruvain? It's just a lot of information. Thank you very much for doing this as always. But this was really great. I think the listeners got a lot of good information, and I hope again that you all bared with my hoarse voice. I'm sorry about that, but we figured we didn't want to not do the show because of it. So thank you for listening, despite the voice.
And I hope you forget everything I just said tomorrow night when we have to do our draft together, so that I can take all these bargains where they are. But if I did not mention any of the players that you wanted to hear, you can always follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out these injury updates. I do answer questions about specific players if you tweet at me, so I will answer them. I also will have my weekly article in Rotoballer coming when the season starts. It comes out every week to help you with your fab for the week.
All right, and I'm Ariel Cohen. You can reach me over at Twitter at ATCNY, and you can find my stuff at Fangraphs at Rotoballer, and on this show, the Beat the Shift podcast, presented by Fangraphs. All right, thank you, Ruvain, once again for coming on the show, as always, and hopefully you've gotten a great draft kit here from our podcast throughout the offseason. We've had all the position previews, the auction strategy show, injury show. We'll probably do one more show in about 10 days or so. You guys, maybe you'll have some drafts after, but a lot of you are drafting before, so good luck on them. I'll be doing a bunch of drafts this week. You can come out to Tout Wars and see me. I'll be there on Sunday in the head-to-head, trying to knock off two-time winning Frank Stampfel, who took the title from me, so try to get it back there.
And if you want to see us both in action, we're going to be at the NFBC auction draft on this coming Friday at 9 a.m. You can watch how we do our auction.
Oh, that's right. For more information, just message us. We'll tell you where you can watch us. So, yeah, if you're in the city this weekend, we will be there. And hopefully you'll have some drafts too, and good luck in those. All right. Once again, thanks so much, Ruvain, as always. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.